Hey guys, welcome to week 11. This week you're going to continue with hypothesis testing, but the difference between chapter 9 and chapter 8 is in chapter 8 you were dealing with just one population and one sample. In chapter 9, we're going to take a look at two different populations, therefore two different samples, and more specifically, two independent samples. So an example of independent samples would be something like, let's say you want to compare the average amount of sleep per week between male college students and female college students. So those two samples and those two populations are independent of each other. An example of two samples that would be dependent would be something like if you wanted to test the results of someone's performance before and after an intervention. So that would be dependent because for each person who participates in your study, you have a before score and an after score for that particular person. So those would be paired data. And so that would be two dependent samples. Chapter 9, we focus on just the independent samples. And so again, let's say, for example, I wanted to know what is the average amount of sleep between males and females? Are they the same or are they different? So we can do a hypothesis test where, let's say, for example, I'm going to make up some data here, but let's say, for example, that males on average sleep more than females. Okay. And so we see that from our sample data, there is a difference. So we can see that males on average have a higher amount of sleep per week than females. But that's just from our sample data. We want to know if that difference is actually real. We want to know if it's statistically different. So to do that, we would do a hypothesis test. So in a hypothesis test, your null hypothesis is always going to be a claim that the two means are the same. So the mean, I'll call mu sub 1, the male average amount of sleep, and we compare it to the female amount of sleep, we claim that it's the same. Then the alternative hypothesis could be that either they're not the same, so mu1 is not equal to mu2, or we could test the claim that maybe males actually sleep more than females on average, or we could test the claim that males on average sleep less than females. So those are our alternatives. But again, the idea here is that the null hypothesis is that the two means don't have a difference. And then we test using our sample data to see if that is true or not true. So the methods that we will use in chapter 9 are very similar to the methods used in chapter 8, but obviously the formulas and calculator functions are going to be different because we're dealing with two samples, more specifically two independent samples.